So as cognitive behavioural therapists, CBT practitioners and aspiring CBT practitioners, it can be good to go back to the grassroots. And yeah, we've looked at the works of a few other cognitive thinkers from yesteryear. We've looked primarily at the works of Mr. Aaron Beck, from Mr. Albert Ellis, some of their main ideas, but everything starts somewhere. So I want to take you back and present you with a framework that's really going to hopefully bring together everything that we've looked at throughout the self-awareness section of the course so far, but really give it a kind of a cognitive grounded basis, if that makes sense. I want to introduce you to a gentleman here named Mr. Ulrich Gustav Neisser. Now, he was born in 1928 and he died in 2012. He was a German-born American psychologist, referred to as the father of cognitive psychology, I think, as I've mentioned. Now, he researched and wrote heavily about the 5 levels of cognitive awareness, which went on to change. He referred to it as the 5 levels of conscious awareness, and ultimately they've been referred to as the 5 levels of self-awareness, which is what I'm going to present you with here. Now, some of his greatest works, I actually managed to get my hands on this book a couple of years ago. Interesting, fascinating read. It's good to know our roots, isn't it? He wrote a book called Memory Observed, and it's about remembering in natural contexts. All right, it doesn't look a particularly interesting or glamorous book, but he actually writes about how it is that we can actually remember our earlier life's events with accuracy instead of through the kind of mental filters and the distortions that operate inside of our minds that now you're completely aware of, how we can remember accurately. So, Neisser suggested that there's 5 different levels of self as we grow in self-awareness, as we grow in maturity, as we grow in insight and understanding of the overriding human experience. He said that when we're brought into the world, we might have a level of insight, but this kind of develops as we grow and mature. So he said that we're born into the ecological sense of self. And this very much ties in and builds upon some of the more developmental theories that are shared, Erik Erikson and some of those guys from the last section of the course. This is where we are aware of internal stimuli, external stimuli. Think back to children, captivated by bright lights, shiny objects, and then some of those little children become fully grown adults who are still captivated by bright lights and shiny objects and bling and all that kind of thing. And this is just a stage of development. It's a level of awareness, all right? At some point in life, it is good and grounded and wise and mature for us to move beyond ourselves and become aware of factors that aren't just us or related to us. So what he suggested was that level 2, or the second level in these 5 levels of awareness, are this interpersonal self, right? And it's this is kind of where self-consciousness comes into play. Sometimes self-esteem can be impacted when we're aware of the interactions that we're having with other people. All right, now just think about how this applies to yourself first and foremost. When you have a conversation with someone and you put your foot in it, or you say something that you really didn't mean to say, and in the conversation, the issue, it just wasn't resolved. You walk away, and then what happens? You end up beating yourself and kicking yourself, and you think, my goodness, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to be assuming the worst of me because we don't like to be judged? I mean, we don't mind judging other people. That's different, isn't it? All right, but we don't like ourselves being judged. Of course we don't. So we're just a bit more aware of how it is that we are responding to and interacting and being with other people. And we're aware that, how other people see us is most likely going to be different from how we see us. So this is level 2, the interpersonal self. The third level of self-awareness is the extended self, all right? And this is when we start to become a bit more aware of timeline events. Now, I want to build this into the course, not just to give you 5 more bullet points to remember, because this is what we're going to be looking at in the next section of the course once we start exploring beliefs, all right? It's generally the meanings that we assign onto our earlier timeline events that go on to spawn and give us the foundation or the basis for many of the beliefs that we operate out of, all right? Remember the elephant? The elephant had that rope around his neck and it was attached to a picket that had been driven into the ground, and he tried to pull and tug and kick and all that kind of thing, but he back then wasn't strong enough to break free from the chains. So this was a timeline event for him. He learned back then that he wasn't strong enough to break free. And because no one ever corrected him in his thinking, he never grew to look at life from an alternative perspective. When he became, fully grown elephant all those years later, anytime he had that rope or chain, noose around his neck, he became just as disempowered as what he was back in the earlier stage of his development. It's interesting, all right? It's interesting when we start to become more aware of how it is that our present is being influenced by the past. And sometimes those people that live more in the future, how it is that we are impacted in the present by the future. Our future expectations impact how we feel today in the present. Our interpretation of the past impacts us how we feel and live and are today in the present. All right, this is when we start getting those aha moments. This is when we start really making those profound changes in our lives. We gain those insights. Oh my goodness, that's why I act and behave and respond in that way. My goodness, I never knew. It was kind of like I couldn't see, but now I can. The lights have been turned on. And these are the levels of insight that we start getting when we start extending ourselves. We look at how we've learned historically in the past, but also we look at how it is that our expectations or future vision impacts how we are today in the present. So this is the extended self. Then there's a private self, and we can tie this idea in with the Johari window just a little bit, all right? And this is where we know that there's parts of us that we're aware of, there's parts that we are okay with other people being aware of, there's those parts of us that we sometimes need a little bit of help gaining insight. As CBT practitioners, you're going to be able to lead people into, certain levels of insight, of an understanding of themselves, but then there's going to be parts of them that you're not aware of, that they're not aware of. And what I'm talking about here, beliefs, core values, hurts, all these sorts of things, the private self. This is when we are actually not just more, but we are fully aware. We become completely aware of the thoughts that are going through our mind on a day-to-day basis. We're not going through life reacting. We're not going through life making assumptions and jumping to conclusions, because we understand ourselves, all right? We can reach the stage of development in life where we're not arriving at the worst, worst end of the stick. We're not just assuming that people are good or bad because they say or do things that we either like or dislike. We're aware that how we experience life and how we relate to people is actually determined by how it is we're processing these events internally. All right, we're really growing self-awareness here. This is where we're not just being governed or managed by our feelings and emotions anymore, like leaves being blown around in the wind to the whims of our feelings, but instead we're using our emotions as a mere gauge, right? To backtrack. What was I thinking about? What thought that wasn't valid might I just have validated, right? I'm feeling a certain way. I don't want to feel this certain way. I don't like it. So rather than just reacting or blaming someone, what was I thinking about? And were these thoughts accurate, valid, healthy, and good? All right, this is when we start bringing ourselves into control on this level. This is the self-management I'm talking about. Self-awareness starts here. Self-management a bit further down the line, but only once we are growing in awareness of ourselves on this level to this depth, all right? Not many people ever get here in life. It's like for many people, the game that they play in life isn't quite as good as their theology, all right? So even in the personal development world, I've had people, they'll say, yeah, there's nothing new here. I get this, I know this. And they'll know it on an intellectual level, they'll know it on a head level because they've read a book, they've read a scholarly paper, but they don't actually push themselves or drive themselves and actually operate in this way. This requires effort, consistency, patience, self-control, self-discipline, hard work, basically. Then there's the conceptual self. So private self, we're also now becoming aware of the motives. Say, for example, you ever find yourself frustrated or feeling a little bit angry or towards someone, or you're reacting or responding to them in a certain way, rather than just continuing on in the reaction or the response, you say, oh, what is it that I'm trying to achieve here? For what purpose am I, feeling this way? What's causing this? Am I trying to control this person? Am I trying to fix this person? Am I trying to lead this person? Am I trying to determine a certain outcome? What am I trying to control? Because anger and rage and frustration, more often than not, fear and angst, are generally centered around us trying to control the outcomes and the circumstances or situations in our lives. And by now, I'm hoping you are starting to appreciate that the only thing that we have any control over in life, full stop, is how we choose to respond to the circumstances and the situations that we face, experience, live through. Are you with me? Right? These are simple ideas, but I promise you, this is profound stuff. You build this into your life will change, and then you will lead your clients by example as a CBT practitioner. All right, I'm being straight with you here, friend. I really am. So this conceptual self, this is when we start becoming aware of our own awareness. All right, if you're actually finding this course enjoyable, you say, my goodness, I'm having all these aha moments. I'm getting these insights. My goodness, Kane, everything you're saying is just making sense. It's not because I've read this stuff in a book, because I haven't. All right, these are all principles and insights that I've gained through putting principles into practice. In the context of my own life, first and foremost, because this is what's given me the authority and the insight to lead other people through exactly the same processes. I know how to help people look in the right areas, right? That's it. This is the insight that I'm doing my best to share with you. So, when we're aware of our own awareness, right? How aware am I right now? Well, right now, I am aware that I am presenting a video I'm talking all about Ulrich Gustav Nieser, and I'm doing my best to talk about the 5 different levels of self-awareness. But how aware am I? Well, I'm aware that my hands are moving around, and this is a bit of a habit of mine because I get quite passionate sometimes when I'm speaking. In fact, passionate right now. I am passionate. What am I passionate about? I'm passionate about you getting the stuff. I genuinely want you to get it. I want you to understand this stuff. Why? Because I know how it's transformed my life. Any good teacher will be passionate about what he or she teaches if they have been on the positive receiving end of a good result or a good outcome in response to that which they're teaching. All right? How aware are you of how aware you are? Interesting little question. How aware are you of how aware you are? Riddle me that one, Batman. All right, contemplate that one. Take some time. Holding an objective perspective and a well-considered view of the self and the self's role in the world. All right. This is where we are living life, we're doing our thing, we're going about our day-to-day routines, and we are just not falling victim or just, falling into the trap of judging people or making assumptions or having feelings and reactions. That's the mark of those people who are not in control of themselves, all right? People who are not aware of themselves. You'll find them in the line at the doctor's clinic and the mental health professional's office waiting for someone to give them medication or fix them. But when we are tapping into our conceptual self, well, this is self-concept. We're aware now, who is it that I want to become? Who is it that I'm becoming? Who do I want to be? How do I actually want to conduct myself on a day-to-day basis? And are my actions and habits congruent with my intentions and my goals, where we start holding ourselves to account? All right, when we reach this stage in life, my friend, there is absolutely no one who could drive you or challenge you or confront you or motivate you more than you, because you are in the full, you are in the driving seat of your own life now, fully in every single aspect of your life. So these are the 5 levels of self-awareness. And I guess you get to kind of gauge now and identify where you're at. How in control are you? How aware are you of how aware you are? Take 5 to 10 minutes just considering these ideas. We've built a few self-reflection questions into just a worksheet that you can access and download in the additional materials section. But just make no qualms about this. How aware you are of yourself is going to determine the level of awareness you'll be able to lead your future clients into. If you haven't been here first or here, or if you're operating in here, more focused on trying to fix a person or trying to heal a person and actually helping a person grow into a greater depth of insight, then if you've not been there, you're not going to be able to lead other people beyond where you're currently at. So go there first, my friend. Know thyself. Hope you find these ideas interesting. I'll see you again in the next clip.